Welcome to lesson 5.3, Fine-Tuning for Personality. Overview. Here's what makes chat fine-tuning genuinely exciting. You're not just teaching a model to answer questions, you're giving it a voice. In this lesson, you'll learn how to train a model that consistently sounds like a specific person with a defined tone, a recognizable style, and predictable behaviors. Whether that's a calm and patient support agent or an enthusiastic creative coach, the techniques are the same. Plan for about 90 minutes and expect to come away with a working, personality-tuned model you built yourself. Learning objectives. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to define clear personality traits for your assistant and translate them into training data. You'll fine-tune a model with a specific tone and style, test whether that personality actually holds up under pressure, diagnose and fix personality drift, and, critically, keep personality in its proper place, enhancing helpfulness, never replacing it. What is personality in AI? When we talk about personality in a language model, we mean three distinct things. Tone is how the model sounds, formal or casual, enthusiastic or reserved, friendly or professional. Style is how it structures its responses, concise or detailed, direct or explanatory, technical or simplified, and behavior is how it acts, whether it asks clarifying questions or just answers, whether it's cautious or confident, reactive or proactive. All three dimensions need to be consistent across your training data, or the model learns a confused, blended personality instead of a coherent one. Here's the first of three example personas. This one defines a professional, patient, and reassuring tone, the kind of voice you'd want in a technical support assistant. The style leans on numbered steps and structured lists to keep guidance clear and scannable. Notice that we're not just picking adjectives at random. Each choice maps directly to a user need. Patient means the model won't rush through explanations. Reassuring means it acknowledges frustration before diving into solutions. Every word in this profile becomes a constraint your training data must honor. The second persona flips the dial entirely. This one is enthusiastic and encouraging, the voice of a creative coach who treats every user idea like it has real potential. The style is conversational, leans on examples, and ends responses with questions that keep the dialogue moving. This matters because enthusiasm isn't just a vibe, it's a structural choice. Enthusiastic responses tend to be shorter, punchier, and question-heavy. Your training examples need to reflect that structure consistently, not just sprinkle in exclamation marks. Here's what that enthusiastic creative persona looks like in action. The prompt asks for mystery story ideas set on a space station. Isolation, zero gravity, limited resources. This is a deliberate test. Can the model take specific constraints and generate focused, imaginative content while staying in character? When you run prompts like this during testing, you're not just checking for creativity, you're checking whether the personality holds when the task gets complex. A model that sounds enthusiastic on simple questions but goes flat on hard ones hasn't really learned the persona. The third persona is a senior software engineer doing code reviews. The tone is direct, constructive, and objective. No cheerleading, no hand-holding. The style favors bullet points and inline code examples. The behavior is specific. Point out the issue, suggest the fix, explain the reasoning. Notice how different this is from the creative coach. Same fine-tuning technique, completely different output character. The persona you choose shapes everything downstream. Your system prompt, your training examples, and your evaluation criteria all flow from this definition. Here's what a code review response from that third persona looks like. 3 issues, each with a line number, a diagnosis, and a concrete fix. The memory leak on line 45 gets an auto-close context manager. The SQL injection on line 67 gets input sanitization. The O and SATWEL algorithm on line 102 gets a set-based rewrite. What you're seeing is personality expressed through structure, no warmth, no encouragement, just precise and actionable. Every training example for this persona needs to match this pattern exactly. With open file as f hash auto closes, data equals sign f dot read SNE. That one-liner is the fix for the memory leak. The with statement is a context manager. When the block exits, Python automatically calls write single quote f dot close SA even if an exception is thrown. No manual cleanup required. In the context of your code review persona, the training data should always pair the diagnosis with a working code snippet like this one. That's what makes the persona genuinely useful rather than just stylistically distinct. Building a personality-tuned model. Before writing a single training example, fill out a personality profile for your assistant. Give it a name and a role. Choose a primary tone from the options provided. Pick a communication style. Define 2 or 3 key behaviors. Does it ask clarifying questions? Does it offer unprompted suggestions? Then set your constraints, response length limits, topics to avoid, phrases to use, and phrases to never use. This profile is your source of truth. Every training example you write later gets checked against it. If an example violates the profile, it doesn't go in the dataset. Here's the system prompt for the enthusiastic creative coach persona. Call this character Alex. The prompt instructs the model to open every response with excitement, celebrate the user's ideas explicitly, and close with a thought-provoking question. Responses stay under 150 words. Exclamation marks are required. Notice that the word limit isn't arbitrary. It enforces the punchy, energetic style that defines this persona. A 400-word response, no matter how enthusiastic it sounds, breaks the character. When you write your system prompt, every constraint should have a reason behind it. The technical support persona gets a very different system prompt. The model is a professional and patient specialist. Responses use numbered steps. The model asks one clarifying question when the problem is ambiguous. The language is calm and reassuring. Phrases like "I understand this can be frustrating" appear explicitly in the prompt. That last detail matters. If you want the model to use specific phrases consistently, put them in the system prompt. The model will learn to treat them as part of its vocabulary for this role. The code review persona's system prompt is the most structured of the three, direct and constructive. Bullet points for issues, code examples for every fix, objective and focused, no praise, no filler. The behavior section is explicit. Identify the problem, suggest the improvement, explain the reasoning. What you're defining here is not just tone, but a response schema. Every review the model produces should follow that same three-part structure. Your training data needs to demonstrate that schema across dozens of varied examples before the model internalizes it reliably. This is the single most important rule in personality fine-tuning. Every training example must match the personality. Not most of them, not the ones where it's easy. Every single one. One off-brand example doesn't just fail to teach the persona, it actively teaches the model that the persona is optional. Consistency in training data is what creates consistency in model behavior. Here's what a training dataset looks like for the enthusiastic creative coach. Each example is a full conversation, a system message that sets the Alex persona, a user message with a realistic writing scenario, and an assistant response that hits every requirement, exclamation marks, a positive opener, engagement with a user-specific idea, and a closing question. The user messages cover different scenarios, starting a story, handling writer's block, developing a character. That variety is intentional. The model needs to learn that the persona applies across all writing situations, not just the easy ones. The pattern every example must follow: exclamation marks for enthusiasm, a question to keep the user engaged, explicit positive reinforcement, a conversational register, and a response under 150 words. If any example in your dataset violates one of these, revise it before training. The model learns from what you give it: garbage in, inconsistent personality out. This is the complete fine-tuning pipeline. The first cell loads the tokens, measure units, llama, decimal, the preserve order through adhesive, would max underscore seek underscore length set, and 4-bit quantization enabled to keep memory. LoRa is added next, targeting the key projection layers. This is what lets you adapt the model's behavior without retraining all 8 billion parameters. Training and validation datasets load from JSON files, and the chat template is applied to format every conversation correctly. The training arguments set your batch size, learning rate, and evaluation strategy. The SFT trainer ties everything together and runs the loop. When training completes, the model and token error are saved to disk. At that point, you have a personality-tuned model ready for inference. Testing personality alignment. This testing script loads your fine-tuned model and runs it against a set of carefully chosen prompts. The test underscore personality function takes a user message and a system prompt, formats them into the correct chat structure, and generates a response with temperature set to control creativity. The test cases cover the range of scenarios your persona should handle: starting a story, overcoming writer's block, developing a character. What you're looking for in the output isn't just whether the answers are correct. You're checking whether the tone, the structure, the question at the end, and the word count all match the profile you defined. If any test case feels off-brand, that's a signal to dig into your training data. Use this evaluation checklist after every training run. Tone consistency asks whether the model sounds like the defined persona on the first response and whether that holds through a multi-turn conversation. Style consistency checks response length and formatting. Does it stay under the word limit? Does it use the right structure? Behavioral traits confirm the model exhibits the specific behaviors you defined, like asking questions or providing code examples. Helpfulness verifies the model actually answers what the user asked. Edge cases test whether the persona survives difficult or ambiguous inputs without breaking character or becoming useless. Score each category 1 through 5 and target an average of 4 or higher before you consider the training successful. Score each dimension 1 to 5, 1 being poor, 5 being excellent. Target an average of 4.0 or above before moving the model to any downstream use. Common personality issues. The first failure mode is tone bleed. The model opens with the right personality but gradually reverts to a generic style as the conversation continues. You'll see this in multi-turn evaluations. Turn 1 sounds like Alex the creative coach, but by turn 3 it reads like a default assistant. The fix has 3 parts. Add more multi-turn training examples where the persona holds across all turns. Reinforce the system prompt explicitly in longer conversations, and increase your training epochs so the model gets more exposure to the consistent pattern. The second failure mode is the opposite problem. The personality is too strong. The model over-indexes on enthusiasm, flooding responses with emojis, exclamation marks, and energy that drowns out the actual content. Users find it exhausting. The fix is in your training data. Tone down the examples, add more moderate responses that are warm but not frenetic, and strip excessive punctuation and emojis from the dataset before the next training run. The third failure mode is when personality crowds out accuracy. Ask the model what the capital of France is, and it launches into a celebration of French culture without ever saying Paris. The persona is performing, but it's not answering. This is a training data problem. Your examples prioritized voice over substance. The fix is structural. Every training example must answer the question accurately first, then apply personality second. Add explicit examples that demonstrate helpful plus personality, not personality instead of helpfulness. Use your validation set to catch accuracy drops before they compound. The fourth failure mode is inconsistency. The model sounds casual and enthusiastic in one response, then switches to formal and instructive in the next, with no change in context to explain the shift. This usually means your training data contains examples with mixed personas, or that you used more than one system prompt format during data preparation. The fixes: audit your training data for style and consistencies, standardize on a single system prompt format throughout, and if the problem persists, you likely just need more data. The model hasn't seen enough consistent examples to lock in the pattern. Balancing personality and helpfulness. Vishan you quicklies, Versinis you quicklies. Here's the principle that ties everything together. Personality enhances helpfulness. It never replaces it. A persona is a delivery mechanism for useful information. The moment the persona gets in the way of the user getting what they need, it has failed its purpose. Keep this as your North Star when evaluating every training example and every model output. Here's what the right balance looks like. A user asks how to sort a list in Python. The enthusiastic persona opens with genuine engagement, something that acknowledges sorting is genuinely useful and sets a friendly tone. Then it answers the question directly and completely with working code. Then it invites follow-up. That sequence, engage, answer, invite, is the template for personality done right. The personality is present throughout, but it never delays or obscures the answer. My list ether, sorted list ether, sorted my list hestad ke hetaistra. Two methods, two different behaviors. Sorted returns a new list and leaves the original untouched. Use this when you need both the sorted and unsorted versions of your data. Write single quote dot sort so modifies the list in place and returns none. Use this when you only need the sorted version and want to save memory. The distinction matters in fine-tuning context too. When your training examples include code, the code needs to be accurate and the explanation needs to be precise. An enthusiastic tone doesn't excuse a technically wrong answer. My understreak lest punct sort ncort changes my list directly. Which method fits your use case depends on whether you need to preserve the original order. If you're processing data in a pipeline where the original list matters downstream, use sorted. If you're done with the unsorted version, write single quote dot sort se is more efficient. Training examples that include this kind of contextual reasoning, not just the answer, but when and why to use it, produce models that give genuinely useful advice rather than just technically correct answers. That response hits all 4 marks: enthusiastic tone, accurate answer, working code examples, and a follow-up question that invites the user to share more context. That's the template for a well-balanced personality response. Here's what over-index enthusiasm looks like in practice. The model opens with excitement about sorting algorithms, asks multiple questions before providing any answer, and buries the actual solution under layers of energy. The user asked a direct question. They need an answer first. Enthusiasm that delays the answer isn't personality, it's friction. When you review your training data, flag any example where the persona appears before the substance. Reorder it. Answer first, personality throughout. That response is the bad example. too excited, doesn't answer clearly, and asks too many questions before actually helping. Never model that pattern in your training data. And here's the opposite failure: accurate but flat. The model correctly identifies both sorting methods and explains the difference, but does it in a tone completely at odds with the enthusiastic coach persona. No energy, no engagement, no closing question. The information is right, but the character is absent. This means your training data didn't have enough examples, or the examples weren't consistent enough for the model to internalize the style. Both the over-enthusiastic and the flat response represent training data problems, and both are fixable. That response is the other bad example. Technically accurate, but missing the enthusiastic, detailed style the persona requires. Accuracy without personality means the fine-tuning didn't take. Complete personality training notebook. Save this notebook to write single quote notebook /04-chat-model/02-personality-training.ipnb.mols. It's a complete self-contained pipeline. The first cell loads the tokens, measure, units, llama. The second cell loads your training and validation JSON files and applies the chat template, so every conversation is formatted correctly for the model. The training configuration sets your epochs, learning rate, batch size, and evaluation strategy. These are the knobs you'll adjust between runs as you iterate. The trainer cell kicks off the training loop. When it completes, the model and token error are saved to disk. The final cell loads the saved model and runs your personality test suite, printing each prompt alongside the model's response so you can evaluate alignment directly. This notebook is your reusable starting point for every personality fine-tuning project going forward. Lesson checklist. Work through this checklist before calling the lesson complete. On the definition side, personality traits documented, system prompt written and tested, phrases to use and avoid listed. On the data side, at least 200 training examples created, all consistent with the defined persona, split into training and validation sets. On the training side, a clean run with loss curves that trend downward, model saved successfully. On the testing side, personality test suite run against diverse prompts, evaluation rubric scored, average of 4.0 or higher achieved. If any item isn't checked, that's where to focus next, not on moving forward. Key takeaways: 6 things to carry forward from this lesson. Consistency is everything. Every training example must match the persona, without exception. Personality enhances helpfulness, it doesn't replace it. Answer first, persona throughout. Test with diverse prompts. The easy ones will always pass. The edge cases reveal the real problems. Expect to iterate. Your first training run will show you what to fix, not produce a finished model. The system prompt matters. It reinforces the persona at inference time, not just during training. And multi-turn is harder than single-turn. Personality must persist across a full conversation, which requires multi-turn examples in your training data. What's next? You've built a model with a genuine, consistent personality. The next challenge is keeping that personality coherent when conversations go long, across multiple turns, topic shifts, and user redirects. That's the focus of Lesson 5.4. Multi-turn conversation training. Additional resources: 3 areas worth exploring if you want to go deeper. Constitutional AI covers how to encode personality through principles rather than just examples. A more systematic approach to alignment. Character.ai has published techniques for maintaining persona consistency at scale that translate well to smaller fine-tuning projects. And the research on persona-based models explores how identity consistency affects user trust and engagement. All 3 will sharpen your intuition for what makes a personality-tuned model actually work in production. This chart maps three distinct personas across six personality dimensions: formality, verbosity, humor, empathy, directness, and technical depth. The corporate assistant scores high on formality and directness, structured, efficient. The friendly tutor leads on empathy and humor, approachable, encouraging, willing to take detours. The concise expert maximizes technical depth while minimizing verbosity, dense information, minimal work. What this visualization makes clear is that personality isn't a single dial, it's a six-dimensional profile, and the combination of those dimensions is what makes each persona feel distinct. When you define your own persona, map it across dimensions like these before you write a single training example. It forces precision that vague adjectives like friendly or professional simply can't provide. This chart tracks tone consistency scores across conversation turns, comparing a base model against a personality-tuned model. The pattern is clear. The base model fluctuates, sometimes coherent, often dipping below the acceptable threshold, especially as conversations get longer. The personality-tuned model holds steady, consistently above threshold from turn 1 through turn 10. The reason for this gap is training data composition. The base model has no examples that demonstrate sustained persona. It has no reason to maintain a consistent voice. The tuned model has seen hundreds of multi-turn conversations where the persona holds throughout, so it has learned that consistency is the expected behavior. This is why multi-turn examples in your training data aren't optional. They're what produce the green line instead of the orange one. Here's the same user question. I'm getting an error in my Python code, answered by three different personas. The corporate assistant responds formally, requests specific details, and structures the interaction as a professional intake process. The friendly tutor responds with warmth and encouragement, signals patience, and frames the debugging process as a collaborative learning experience. The concise expert skips the preamble entirely and asks one targeted technical question. Same information need, three completely different interaction experiences. This is the practical value of persona definition. Users engaging with the corporate assistant and the friendly tutor will feel like they're talking to different people even though the underlying model architecture is identical. The training data is doing all the work. This bar chart compares a base chat model against a personality-tuned model across 5 evaluation metrics: persona adherence, tone match, consistency across turns, user satisfaction, and task completion. The personality-tuned model leads on every single. The largest gaps are in persona adherence and tone match, which makes sense since those are exactly what personality fine-tuning targets. But notice that task completion also improves. That's the key insight. A model with a well-defined, consistent persona doesn't just feel better, it actually completes tasks more effectively, because the structured persona encourages structured, complete responses. Personality and helpfulness aren't intention. When done correctly, they reinforce each other. This table maps 6 personality traits to their corresponding training signals and example text patterns. Enthusiastic maps to upbeat openers and exclamations. Concise maps to short responses that eliminate filler. Empathetic maps to acknowledging the user's feelings before addressing the problem. Expert maps to precise technical vocabulary without hedging. Playful maps to analogies and light humor. Formal maps to full sentences without contractions. The reason this table matters is that it converts vague personality adjectives into concrete, detectable patterns. When you're reviewing your training data, you can check each example against this table. Does the response actually demonstrate the trait, or does it just claim it? "I'm here to help" is not empathy. That sounds really frustrating. Here's what's happening is 5 failure modes, each with a symptom and a fix. Tone bleed. The persona fades mid-conversation. Fix it by pushing your personality examples above 30% of the dataset and adding multi-turn examples. Personality collapse. The model reverts to its base style after several turns. Fix it with more multi-turn training data where the persona holds throughout. Over-indexing. Responses become cartoonish and exaggerated. Reduce the learning rate, use fewer epochs, and add neutral examples to rebalance. Inconsistency. The model switches styles within a session, strengthen the system prompt, and add more refusal mismatch. The persona conflicts with the model's safety behavior. Add explicit examples showing the persona responding safely to sensitive topics. Each of these is a training data problem at its root. The fix is always in the data. This evaluation framework is where you'll track your model's personality performance over successive training runs. The axes represent the metrics from your evaluation checklist: tone consistency, persona adherence, helpfulness, and the rest. Right now it's empty, and that's correct. You populate it as you run evaluations, not before. What you're building here is a feedback loop. Each training run produces scores. Those scores tell you which dimensions improved and which regressed. You adjust your training data accordingly and run again. The goal isn't a perfect first run. It's a systematic process that converges on the model you actually want. Track every run, note what changed between runs, and the graph will tell you whether you're moving in the right direction.